Good morning and greetings to everyone joining us on the call, our partner institutions. Welcome to the MINDS NRF Scholarship for the PhD Scholars Information Session. So we are joined here by partner universities from across the continent, and we thank you once more for being here with us in this early morning. We will start off by opening the session with Dr. Moyo giving us a brief introduction on the MINDS Scholarship and on the benefits of the MINDS NRF Scholarship, and then we'll hand over to the NRF team, which will give us a brief programming and the possibility of applications and logistics of the scholarship once obtained. We'll hand over to our CEO, Dr. Moyo, to give us a brief introduction as we kickstart.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Let me start by welcoming our partners, especially NRF in this instance, although clearly we've got partner institutions as well. But I think from an information dissemination perspective today, our partners in this exercise are NRF, Dr. Ngango, Nontogozo and Nelson are with us. And as Sarah said, they will take the next part of this session to detail a bit more this particular program. My role today is to try to frame this particular program in the bigger context of what we're trying to do really. We recognize that our continent at the moment is not working in a joined up way. We use this label Africa very loosely. We will compare Africa to India and China in the sense of size of geography and even populations. But Africa is over 50 odd countries, 55 or thereabouts. And we need to do something actively and deliberately to make our continent work in a much more joined up way. And this will not happen on its own. I often remind people that when you go back in history, you will find that it's always been the case that humanity is sought to forge ways of cooperation by employing all sorts of tactics, including marriages across borders. Like if you look at Europe and the royal families, you find that they are actually very closely related, because way back then, empires were literally cobbled together through, like I say, any means possible, including marriage. As of today, you will notice that Africans tend to be lured away from the continent to go and study in Europe, in Asia, in the US, and often we don't really understand what these countries are investing in. When you go and study in the US or in Europe or in Asia for that matter, and you come back to your country after you complete your studies, and you're given a position of responsibility, let's take ESCOM, ZESA, in the electric national company, and then you are procuring equipment for that enterprise. As a student with familiar equipment from wherever you went to study, your first inclination, unsurprisingly, is going to be to look to where you know, where you've been made familiar with resources in that particular part of the world. So you are likely to look to procure equipment for that enterprise you're in charge of in the country where you went to study. So in many ways, you become an ambassador. Back on the African continent, you are now an ambassador. And I'm not saying there is anything wrong with this. This is, I think, a valid strategy to build these linkages. So we, as Africans, need to understand that unless we invest in doing something similar, our countries will struggle to find ways of working together, because it will just be theory and philosophy without leaders amongst us simply putting into practice a lived reality. If we go back to our fight for independence, it's also illustrative. you find that the people, the leaders who took us through independence could work together. They were cohesive because they had met at education institutions of higher learning. Such institutions included Fort Hare in South Africa, Makerere in Uganda, Fuara Bay in, I think, Sierra Leone. So I could name a number of such institutions where our leaders of that time met at these institutions of higher learning, forged personal relationships, and when they became responsible for executing the strategies of liberating their countries, very naturally, they sought each other's support and they were able to work together. Now, Africa of today, the Africa of today does not display any similar awareness for the need to do this, which is why we at Minds at the beginning, before we forged the partnership with NRF, figured that we had to find a mechanism through a scholarship program and leadership development to get Africans to get to understand their continent. So what did we do? We put together a scholarship program with a difference. If you became a Minds scholar, you would be supported to study on the African continent, but not in your own country. We wanted you to get familiar with the continent. Go out there and as young people, fall in love, get married out to not your nationals, but learn to treat yourself as an African. Not a Zambian, not a Zimbabwean, not a Nigerian, but an African. Get to know each other, establish networks. And from that point of view, the lived reality of having lived in these other countries and getting to know the people, their cultures, their practices, would make it much easier further down the line for you to participate in an exercise which would bring African countries closer together. We need, amongst other things, I reckon, to really work hard at giving, at the moment we've got the Africa continental free trade area as a concept. The implementation of that concept will require human beings and people whose lived reality mimics or kind of gives an example of what can be done. They will be doing, you create an alliance or an alignment rather, between personal interests, country interests, and the continental interests. When you create this alliance or alignment, the execution and implementation of plans becomes very easy or easier. If I take a South African married to a Nigerian, and these two countries still have got travel restrictions, visas, and so on and so on. If this couple become senior people in their societies, I can guarantee you that they will put a lot of effort into removing those travel restrictions so that at a personal level, they are able to visit their in-laws in either country without too much hassle. But when they do that, they are also actually making it easier for Nigeria and South Africa to do trade with each other without all the hassles and blockages that currently exist. So that's an illustration, an example of what we're trying to do here. Create an alignment of what appear to be just personal interests, but those personal interests will mimic very quickly country interests and continent interests. So, but today we are talking about the PhD program to support for the time being students coming from the rest of the continent into South Africa. And again, what it will achieve is the rest of the continent, hopefully through this experience of doing research in South Africa, will begin to understand what South Africa is, not from reading from a piece of paper, but from living in South Africa, interacting with South Africans, getting to understand their journey, the history of the country, and hopefully beginning to also appreciate the challenges that that country has. And hopefully maybe contributing on that journey to solving some of those challenges, both at a South Africa level, but also at a Pan-African level. So this is what this effort is about. But I think what it also behoves the people who get this support, the students themselves, to understand that this is not just an opportunity for you to acquire an academic qualification. This is an opportunity for you to acquire tools at a broader level. Academic, yes, exposure to the continent, and in the hope that you will deploy these instruments to execute on the agenda I've just articulated, bring the continent closer together so that we can become, as a continent, a force to reckon with on the global stage. Thanks very much. That's all I need to say, I think.
Thank you so much for that insight, Dr. Moyo. Now we'll hand over to NRF to take us briefly through what is required from scholars and how they can go ahead applying for the PhD scholarship and all the eligibility criteria. NRF.
Yes, good morning, colleagues. And thank you very much, Dr. Moyo, for that introduction that really set the tone for this information session. I think it is important that as a continent, we work collaboratively in ensuring that we do develop the human capacity in the continent so that we can be productive.
I'm from the NRF. My name is Nontokozo Kunene, and I am a professional officer under the leadership and guidance of Dr. Mbulelo Ngango, who's our executive director. With me, I have also my colleagues, Mr. Nelson Komane, as well as Mrs. Tandega Mthethwa, who is the acting director for GMSA, which is the grants management aspect of the NRF. So the three of us are going to give a presentation. I'm just going to quickly share my screen, and can please someone alert me once they're able to see it, please?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you so much. Okay, so this presentation is just for the call that has currently opened, which is open already as it is, for the postgraduate funding for the 2024 academic year. So we opened the call this year for funding for the next academic year, which will be in 2024. So the presentation will just go through the background and the eligibility criteria, the funding values. In this case, we're just gonna be focusing on doctoral students, as well as the key requirements to implement the core, the timelines for applications, the review of applications so that you understand how your applications are reviewed and how you are deemed eligible at the institution. We're also going to talk about the progress reporting for continuing and new students. In this case, we'll be talking about new students, as well as the appeals process, the post-award information that you need to know prior coming into the country to study, as well as the global knowledge partnerships that we have. So the NRF mandate is embedded in the following areas: in advancing knowledge, where we support research and we provide for research infrastructure platforms, as well as the provision of research equipment. It is also embedded in transforming lives, where we then do the postgraduate support, as well as for early and emerging career researchers. We also support those. It is to inspire a nation, and we do this through science engagement, which is done through education, awareness, as well as communication. And it is also to strengthen the national system of innovation. And this we do by building partnerships, such as we have by partnering with Minds and creating synergies, as well as providing system-wide information and intelligence. So these are some of our partners that we partner with. These are the partners that we've partnered with. As you can see, for our postgraduate programs, we have Minds that we have partnered with, and we're grateful for, as well as for the global knowledge partnerships. So please note that all documents that must be read before submitting an application are available on our NRF website. So it's the nrf.ac.za, and then you look for funding. Under call documents, you'll get the NRF call for proposals for funding in 2022 and 2023. We have there our framework documents as well as our frequently asked questions. Please go and read those before submitting an application, so that should there be anything that you don't understand, then you can revert back to the NRF to ask for clarity, or if you are encountering issues on the system, then we're able to help you. But please read them for your own benefit and for your own understanding on how to actually apply for the call and whether you are eligible or not to apply. So our targets for bursary for transformation, we have citizen targets. This is just general information for the NRF, where we fund 95% of South Africans. We fund 5% of international students. So this is all through, and we fund 55% women. So this is all through from honors, all masters and doctoral. And then we have our own South African targets, which we fund 90% Blacks, 10% whites, and 1% of people living with disabilities. Okay, sorry, I just need to. So the criteria for allocation of the NRF Minds funding, you need to be recommended by the institution. So what that means is you need to apply to a South African institution where you are intending to study, and the institution will then review your application. So we have an application form that the institution will review your application, because as the NRF, we can't make decisions in terms of what your project is on, because we believe that the institution has professors and doctors who are experts, you know, in a specific field. So they are the ones that actually go through your application, and then they recommend your application to the NRF, saying that yes, it aligns with what we are trying to do. It aligns with the National System of Innovation. So that is why your application goes to the actual institution, where it is reviewed by a panel of experts in that particular field, and then they recommend it to the NRF. But we will speak on how the review process actually happens a bit later in the presentation. Again, we look at the knowledge domains as specified by the funder. We also look at the availability of budget, if we do have enough money to fund students. There is also the APP targets that we must align to, as well as the institutional rates of scholarship awards taken up, and the postgraduate enrollments at each university, and the institutional spread, as well as the geographical area of applicants, and the eligibility for partial cost of study funding. And I'm specific about this because all international students are funded at partial cost of study. So we have two study modules. We've got full cost of study and partial cost of study, and all international students are funded at partial cost of study. So these are the new awards for the 2023 academic year. We're just going to focus on doctoral down here. And the applications that were submitted by universities were 1,451. And of those, 10% were incomplete or not eligible. Those that were not funded by the NRF due to budget constraints was 51%, which equates to 744 students that were not funded. And those that were funded by NRF at the PhD level was 39%, which equates to 566. Now remember that this is across all applications that we received. So this just goes to show that if we're only able to find 39% of all the students that had applied, that the NRF scholarship is very competitive. So when you do make an application, you need to ensure that your application is completed in full, and that you really, really think about your proposal and the projects that you are going to do, so that it is easier for you to get a chance and be considered to be funded by the NRF. This is just a demographic breakdown. So for doctoral, again, we're just going to focus on doctoral and international students. We could only fund 1% of all the international students that had applied for the NRF. Again, this shows that the NRF scholarship, or the NRF Minds scholarship as well, is very competitive. Now, this is just to take you through the screening of applications by the NRF. So the reasons why applications are screened out at the NRF, usually it is because of academic merit eligibility not met. So we have an academic eligibility criteria or requirements that you need to have obtained 65% or more at your master's level. Again, if there's missing referees, so references, responses, this is a response from your supervisor, then you are screened out again at the NRF. If you are over the age limit, so you need to be 32 in December this year to apply for the scholarship and be eligible in terms of age. If you're older than the age of 32 by December, unfortunately, you are not eligible to apply for the NRF Minds scholarship. You are also screened out if you are holding a full-time employment, so you're not allowed to be employed, as well as if they are missing attachments. In this case, there's no ID or passport copy, and there's no academic transcripts that you have attached with your application. You are then screened out. As well, if there's no project outline and no research information that has been provided. So these are all the things that you need to make sure that they are there with your application so that you are eligible and you can be considered for funding. Now, we have had delays in terms of concluding funding decisions when we've received eligible applicants, but this is because some of the higher education institutions submit ineligible applications, which then delays the screening process at the NRF and delays the concluding of the funding decisions as well. So we just urge that the institutions or the universities to follow the NRF screening checklist guidelines and submit applications that meet all the requirements. So I'm now going to speak on the eligibility criteria. Again, we're focusing on just doctoral. So for the NRF Minds, we are focusing on doctoral only, and the maximum period of support is 3 years, okay? And the people that are eligible for this scholarship, the NRF Minds scholarship, is only international students, which means you need to come from outside of South Africa to study in South Africa. We also have something that we call extension support. So if we funded you for 3 years, and you are still unable to complete your qualification within the 3 years, or unable to submit your thesis within the 3 years, then we can extend you, apply as well for something that we call the extension support for masters and doctoral. So you apply, that can either be for 6 months or for 12 months, depending on the work that you need to do. So you fill in an application, your supervisor endorses your application as well, saying that yes, you still need time to finish up your thesis or your lab work or whatever that you might be doing or need to do further. Okay, so what is very important is to please note that the period of support is calculated from the first year of registration for the study or research, regardless of the NRF funding, but it excludes the pre-proposal year. So what this means is, for instance, if you are registered for your PhD, or if you're already registered for a PhD in 2022 and you apply for the NRF, then you applied for NRF in 2022 for the 2023 academic year, we consider the fact that we can only fund you for 2 years because we consider the fact that you had already started with your PhD in 2022. So we'll only fund you for 2023 and 2024. And if you're still unable to complete your studies, then you can apply for extension support, which then we can extend the support that we're giving you by 6 or 12 months And please note that we give you the same amounts that you had received the previous year. Okay, so if you had gotten, let's say, a 100,000 Rand per annum, then that is what you'll get for your extension support. Obviously, for 6 months, it's going to be half of that, so it will be 50,000, and for 12 months, it will be the full 100,000. This is the eligibility criteria for first-time applicants. So only partial cost of study is what is gotten by international students, and this is for doctoral. This is for the NRF Mines. You must be a non-South African citizen, and you must have obtained 65% or more for your year mark for your master's, and have completed your master's in 2 years. And also the field of study does play a role in being considered for funding for the NRF Mines scholarship. Now, for the age eligibility to be funded, to contribute towards lowering, which is our aim, we want to lower the age at doctoral completion. So the NRF eligibility criteria for bursaries for full-time studies has an age limit to achieve doctoral completion by the age of 35. So the maximum age at application, as I mentioned before, is 32 years. You need to be 32 between now and December for you to apply. And the number of years to complete is we only fund you for 3 years. Again, you can still apply for extension support if you are unable to finish in those 3 years. And the anticipated maximum age at completion is then 35 years. And yeah, this is to lower the age at doctoral completion. Now, exclusions for you not to be funded. So the majority of student bursaries will be awarded in a directed manner so as to respond to national priorities, vulnerable disciplines, and fields important for socioeconomic development, as may be identified from time to time. So in order for the NRF to realize this goal of contributing to the knowledge economy in South Africa by attaining at least 1% of the global research and development output, the NRF will not fund any undergraduate qualifications. So we do not fund any undergraduate qualification, regardless of the NQF exit level. We do not fund any postgraduate certificates or diplomas, regardless of the NQF exit level. We also do not fund masters by coursework only, and we do not fund professional masters and doctoral degrees. So we do not fund any MBAs or anything like that. So any professional degrees at the NRF. So I hope that is clear. So upon acceptance of the provisional awards for doctoral, for the NRF Mines, you need a couple of documents to accompany your conditions of grant. So there is a conditions of grant that you get an award letter and the conditions of grant that you need to sign. To accompany that, you need confirmation of a pass mark of 65% or more at a master's level. You need all your academic transcripts to be to accompany the conditions of grants, as well as a copy of passport for you as international students. You also need proof of registration at the institution that you applied for. So there is a submission deadline by the 30th of April. Annually, you need to have submitted your signed conditions of grant, as well as all the documents that are mentioned here. If you do not, then your scholarship, unfortunately, you will forfeit your scholarship and it will be taken back to the NRF. Now, the indicative funding values, the value of the scholarship for doctoral, again, as I mentioned, you get funded at partial cost of study, and the value is 107,000 Rand per annum. You do not, unfortunately, get a study device allowance, and you do not get any assistive technology device as well from the NRF. But I know that Mines then comes in with a top-up for you. And I think they can speak into what top-up they give you and how much the top-up is, but then they give you a top-up to top up to this amount per annum. Then the scholarship amounts will be reviewed on an annual basis, subject to the agreed CPI-linked sector-wide increases and alignment with the guidelines of the Department of Higher Education and Training bursary scheme for students at public universities. And universities are requested. So all funds are administered. What is important is that all funds are administered by the institutions, by the universities, and not by the NRF. As the NRF, we pay the institution, and the institution that administers the funds to the students. So universities are requested to either make monthly payments to the students or quarterly payments to the students, and that is up to the university or at the university's discretion. Nelson is then going to take us through the key requirements to implement the 2022 call for application. Thank you.
So thank you and good morning, the Minds colleagues. Good morning to our esteemed delegates. My name is Nelson Komane from the National Research Foundation. I'll be taking this presentation forward from here. It will cover some of the aspects that relate to what my colleague Ms. Nontokozo Kunene has covered. So without wasting time, let me go on to talk to the key requirements to implement the call for the 2020 application cycle. So the key requirements for the higher education institutions for the NRF postgraduate scholarship applications are as follows. Doctoral applications with an average academic merit score of less than 65%, it should not be rejected if their studies are still in progress. What we are saying here is that if you are still busy with your master's degree and you wish to apply for the NRF Minds scholarship, you will be using your honors or your 4-year degree mark. And if that is less than 65%, we are saying to our institutions that they should not reject that application with a score of less than 65, because we are still awaiting the master's academic score. So the second point is that international students will be allowed to apply with a pass or a pass with distinction without a numerical mark. I think I should indicate clearly that for this purpose that when international students apply with a pass without a numerical mark, they will be allocated a default score of 1 under academic merit criterion. And then the last point is that institutions should ensure that they submit applications that are eligible to the NRF by the due date, because if they fail to do that, then they will be disadvantaging students who applied on time and most probably would be meeting eligibility requirements. Okay, I'm now going to cover the timelines for the application call. Okay, so the NRF will only allow a single online application on the NRF Connect system. So all applications must be made on the NRF Connect system. That is the system for the applications to the NRF by prospective applicants. And then in the next stage there, students can choose preferred program, but for the purpose of this convention or meeting, students are encouraged to choose the Minds program. And then once they have chosen the Minds program, they will be able to complete all the relevant sections of the application. And then students will then be considered for partial cost of study funding once they are judged as meeting requirements, all the requirements. Let me echo what my colleague, Ms. Nontokozo, has indicated, that while we highlight partial cost of study from the NRF, our Minds colleagues will top that up. I think it will be on a monthly basis so that students are not left stranded without anything to go on in terms of living allowances. So the partial cost of study is largely for international students, and while other NRF applicants who do not qualify for what we call the full cost of study. Okay, so in terms of the timelines for the 2023 call for the DSI, Department of Science Innovation, NRF postgraduate scholarship applications for funding in the 2024 academic year. So to the left, under activity, we have the call opening. Our call for applications by the students opened on the 3rd of April 2023, and then student submission of applications cutoff date for doctoral students will be the 11th of July 2023. We encourage students to really start off with their application well on time and get all their documents in order and not wait for the time closer to the cutoff date, because probably at that time the system, there will be a lot of traffic on the system, and a student might find difficulties maybe submitting their application. So please submit your application on time so that it is received well on time by the NRF. And then the next activity is the DA validation of eligible students. So the DA is a designation authority that is stationed at our South African universities, which works hand in hand with the NRF on matters of funding and other related matters. So the DA will validate eligible applications by the students by the 4th of September 2023. So really the review of applications by our higher education institutions or South African universities where the students intend to be based will set their own cutoff dates for the review of those applications, but it should be before the 4th of September, which brings me to the next point, that the DAs will submit the applications that are recommended for funding to the NRF by the 4th of September. If they do not adhere to this closing date, then it will disadvantage the student unless prior arrangements are made with the NRF. And then in terms of the internal screening by one of our units, the Grant Management and Systems Administrations, they will be screening all applications, but they will also prioritize applications that do not require what we call a financial means assessment. And this will take place between the 4th of September all through to the 10th of November 2023 for doctoral applications. And then the awards approval by the NRF business units. this award approvals will happen by the 18th of December 2023. And then that is when we will be preparing now to send out the letters of awards to successful applicants. And successful applicants may expect to receive their letters of awards that will confirm that indeed they have received the NRF Minds Scholarship that will take place on or by the 22nd of December 2023. Let me pause here and indicate, I think this is an important piece of information to our delegates, that we are hoping to place up to 20 students for the 2024 academic year. This is because annually we had set our selves a target of 10, but in 2023 academic year, we didn't place any students. So we are carrying over that 10 that we were supposed to have placed in 2023 over to 2024. So there will be 20 awards that will be made for the 2024 academic year. Okay, coming back to my slide. Unsuccessful applicants can expect to receive feedback on their application by the 31st of January 2024. And then there is what we call a process for appeals. So students who feel that they have not been awarded because of scientific or procedural aspect, then they are allowed to appeal the decision by the NRF. So the screening of applications for appeal will take place from the 4th of March 2024. And then the appellants can expect their outcomes of their appeal outcome or feedback on their appeal outcome by the 29th of March 2024. Okay, so I will be talking now to the review process and the standardized scorecard for doctoral applications. So doctoral funding applications will be reviewed at the university in South Africa, where the student intends to study for their postgraduate or for their doctoral degree. And then reviews will be undertaken using a standardized doctoral scorecard that will be provided by the NRF. I will be touching more on the scorecard itself in the next slides. And then only applications that are recommended for NRF funding based on merit review may be submitted to the NRF by the university DA or designated authority. So applications that are not recommended for NRF funding based on merit review will be rejected on the NRF Connect system with a comment, and that is the responsibility vested upon the university's DA. And then the university DA or designated authority must submit confirmation of the review process that they have conducted. That will include the panel composition and the outcomes of the panel. And then it should be signed by the deans of faculties or by the deputy vice chancellor of research. So the NRF will share the detailed review scorecard and the review spreadsheet template with the universities for the purpose of the review of applications. Now, looking at the merit reviews scorecard for doctoral applications, particularly for the new applications, we have the review criteria and the weight to the far left. So in terms of the review criterion number 1, which is academic merit, it will carry the weight of 30%. I think by far it carries more weight than any other criteria aspects. And then this is largely the percentage mark for the master's degree if it has been completed, or if the master's degree is in progress, an average percentage mark for honors degree will be considered, or the average percentage mark for the major subject in the final year of the 4-year undergraduate degree. And then in terms of the rating, if the student scores 75% or what we can call a pass with distinction and above, they will be allocated a score of 3. And then between 70 and 74, they will be allocated a score of 2. And then for 65 to 69, they will be allocated a score of 1. Let me go back to remind delegates and the prospective applicants that when you apply and you don't have a numerical mark, and we are not going to reject your application. However, this score of 1, that is an average, which denotes 65 to 69, will be allocated for you. And then the last one is a cohort who score 64% and below, and those will be allocated a score of 0. And then as a result, they will not be eligible for NRF Mines funding. Now going on to the second review criterion, which is completion time for previous degree. This one carries a total weight of 15%, and then it implies or relates to the time that has been taken for completion of the master's degree, if it has been completed, or if the master's degree has not been completed or is still in progress, then the time taken to complete the honors degree or a 4-year undergraduate degree. And then in terms of the scores to be allocated on this criterion, if you complete you have completed your master's degree or your honors, then a score of 3 will be allocated. The maximum or the minimum prescribed period for master's completion is 2 years, which will earn you a score of 3. And then if you complete your master's in 2 years and 6 months, that is the minimum prescribed period plus additional 6 months, then a score of 2 will be allocated for you. And then if you complete your master's in 3 years, that is a minimum prescribed period of 2 years plus 1 year, then you will be allocated a score of 1, which is average. And then if you complete your master's after 3 years, that is the minimum prescribed period plus 3 years and go and so on, then a score of 0 then will be allocated when your application is scored. And then going to the third review criterion, which is a track record or research output, it also carries a weight of 15%. And this relates more to the evidence of research outputs in accredited peer-reviewed publications, presentations at conferences and at symposiums. So if you have produced one journal article and you have delivered a presentation at the conference and a symposium, then a score of 3 will be allocated. And then if you deliver 2 conference presentations or symposium presentation, or 1 journal article is produced, then you will then be allocated a score of 2. And then if 1 conference or symposium presentation is delivered, then a score of 1 then will be allocated. So, and then in the case that no inputs have been produced, then a score of 0 will then be allocated. The fourth review criterion speaks to the priority research area, and then that carries a weight of 10%. So this is the research that is aligned to one of the national research priorities that appear in the National Development Plan and other legislature documents. And this one, if your research aligns to the national research priority areas, then you will be allocated a score of 3. And then if it is not aligned to any national research priority area, then you will be allocated a score of 0. So it's either a 3 or a 0. It's either you are aligned or you are not aligned in terms of the research that you are conducting. And then the fifth review criterion is the originality of the doctoral study. This will carry a lot of weight also, 20%. And then this relates to the problem statement, the identified knowledge gaps relating to the problem statement, the aims and the objectives of the study. If these are fully aligned and comprehensively described, then a score of 3 will be allocated. If they are fully aligned and there is motivation for them, then a score of 2 will be allocated. If they are described but with minor gaps, then a score of 1 will be allocated. And then if these are poorly developed, then a score of 0 will be allocated. And this will then imply that the applicant is not eligible for funding under the NRF Minds scholarship. And then the last criterion is the potential impact, which is the societal and the knowledge impact of the research conducted. It will carry a weight of 10%. And then this relates to the potential for the research to contribute to national research strategies and national strategic goals of the knowledge economy. And in a case that the potential impact, either societal and or knowledge have been comprehensively demonstrated, a score of 3 will be allocated. If the potential impact has been demonstrated without details, a score of 2 will be allocated. And then if it has been demonstrated with minor gaps, a score of 1 will then be allocated. And then where this has not been demonstrated, a score of 0 will be allocated. And then let me indicate that according to the South African Qualification Authority, the minimum prescribed period of study means the minimum academic years that have been prescribed for the completion of a designated qualification. So students are advised and really encouraged to discuss the originality of their doctoral studies and the potential impact thereof with their potential supervisors. Okay, and then we thought that this would also add value for our delegates, because my colleague Ms. Nontokozo Kunene have been talking about the extension support. So here we are using the same scorecard for the master's and doctoral extension support program. And then in terms of the review criteria, there are 3. The first one is a progress made to date, which carries a weight of 25%. And then this relates to the report on the research work that has been done or completed in fulfillment of the requirements for the doctoral degree. And then if it has been comprehensively described, a score of 3 will be allocated. And if it's adequately described, the score of 2 will be allocated. And if the progress has been partially described, a score of 1 will be allocated. And then in a case where this is poorly stated, a score of 0 will be allocated. And then the second criterion is reasons why the study could not be completed within the NRF funding period, which is 3 years. This will carry a weight of 25%. And then this relates to why the study could not be completed within the NRF funding period or time. And then if this has been comprehensively explained or described, then a score of 3 will be allocated. If it adequately described, a score of 2 will be allocated. Partially described, 1, and then poorly stated, then a score of 0. And then the last and final criterion for the extension support is the work plan to complete the degree within the indicated timelines or time frame. This carries a lot more weight than the other criteria, which is 50%. There are 5 aspects here which relate to this. Number 1, it's work plan for either 6 or 12 months, which would be indicating the activities for completion of a doctoral degree and indicating the start and the completion date of each activity. And then the second aspect is the proposed date for submission of the dissertation for examination. And then the third one is the timelines for corrections to the dissertation from or by the external reviewers. And then the fourth one is the details of the manuscript to be drafted and submission timelines of such a manuscript. And then the last one is the proposed graduation date. If this have been fully and comprehensively indicated and are fully aligned, a score of 3 will be allocated. If they are fully aligned and they are motivated, a score of 2 will be allocated. If they are described, but there are some gaps there, a score of 1 will be allocated. And then if they are poorly described or developed, then a score of 0 will be allocated, in which case the application will be deemed as not eligible for funding for extension support. And then once more, the students are advised to discuss their originality of the doctoral study and potential impact with their potential supervisors. Okay, and then I will be talking to feedback to the applicants. The first feedback that I will talk to is feedback by the university to the applicants. And the universities must provide feedback to applicants who are screened at the university for eligibility and have been deemed not eligible for funding. So if you are not eligible for funding, expect feedback from the university. Number 2, university will provide feedback to applicants who have been reviewed by the panel at the university and were recommended as not eligible for funding by the panel of reviewers. And this will be important for those who then be launching the appeal applications. And then the second aspect will be the feedback that is provided by the NRF. So the NRF must provide feedback to applicants whose applications were recommended for funding, but during the screening process by our grants management and system administrations at the NRF for eligibility and were deemed not eligible for funding, then the NRF will then provide feedback in this regard. And then secondly, the NRF will be expected to provide feedback to applicants whose applications were recommended for funding, but were not awarded funding due to budget constraints. And in this instance, the NRF will send a regret letter directly to the affected applicant. And then the last feedback that will come out from the NRF is that for the recommended applications for funding, and those applications then are approved. And then in this regard, the NRF will publish a list of all successful applicants on the NRF website under that link. And then also they will share the list of successful applicants with the research or postgraduate offices at the respective universities. And then I will be talking to the program for continuing and new students. I think in this regard, more emphasis will then be put on new students. Progress reports for students. This is for students that are funded under the DSI NRF postgraduate student funding policy from the 2021 academic year. And students who do not submit their progress reports as per their signed condition of grant will not receive continuation funding for the 2024 academic year if they are continuing, but if it's one of the students for the mines, NRF mines, who will first receive funding in 2024. If they don't submit their progress report in 2025, then they will not receive continuation funding. And then all students funded by the NRF are required to submit the progress reports on the NRF Connect system. And then the dates on which this should be submitted are indicated below. So our focus is more on doctoral. For doctoral, it would be the mid-February. And then the number of reports that would be expected, all in all, from the students for doctoral degrees is 3. The first one will be in February, following the first year of funding, and the second year, and so on. And then I'm talking now to the progress reporting dimensions and milestones for doctoral studies. And then the reporting dimensions are as follows, and milestones. For doctoral students, we would be expecting that students report on their literature review completion, and this should be indicated online under the proposed research plan section of their progress report. And then the second one is the proposal that has been approved by the Higher Degrees Committee of the university. This should be attached as proof. And then the third one is that students are expected to sign a memorandum of understanding with their supervisor or HOD, and this should be attached as proof. I will talk to that asterisk in a short while. And then the fourth one is the research progress, and then this should be indicated online under the proposed research plan section of the progress report. The next aspect of reporting is the academic support service. Students are expected to undertake academic support services. This is indicated more on our call documents, for instance, the framework documents, and this should be attached as proof. And then the next aspect is the conference presentation. Should be indicated under research outputs of the progress report, the manuscript drafted under the research output section. And lastly, the research that the student has completed and the dissertation submission. It should be indicated online under the proposed section plan of the progress report. Back to the asterisk, as I have promised. So in terms of the MOU between the student and the supervisor or the HOD, if at the time of submitting the progress report, there is no proof to attach relating to the MOU between the student and the supervisor, so this should be indicated in terms of the reasons why this has not been achieved and the timelines for submission. And then I'll be talking to the appeals process. The appeals process will apply to those students whose applications would have been submitted to the NRF, but then would have been rejected on procedural or scientific grounds. And then appeals can fall into one or two of these categories studies the procedural or scientific merit, and the following would then constitute a procedural grounds for appeal. An application that is improperly rejected as not appropriate for the funding opportunity or call category. And then the second one is an application that is rejected because of relevant information not provided to the assessment panel by the institution. Then the third one, where relevant information was not considered by the assessment panel as per the initial application. And then also where conflict of interest rules were not followed by the assessment panel. And then the application reviewed by an inappropriate panel or reviewers. And then lastly, under procedural, the violation of the NRF postgraduate call framework and application guide documents. And then the following aspects would then constitute disputed scientific merit based on an unsuccessful outcome during the review process undertaken by the university. Number one, scientific disagreement between the assessment panel and the applicant, or the evidence of bias against a school of thought or philosophy of approach. And then what is the eligibility for one to appeal? The appeals process will be undertaken by the university that reviewed the application. An applicant must have requested and received official review feedback on their initial application via their institutional research office before submitting an appeal. This is important. New source material or information that was not included in the original application. For an example, papers that have been published since the submission of the application or revisions to the applications will not be taken into consideration during the appeal process. This will render the appeal invalid. And then the next point, appeals may be lodged against the funding decision taken, such as partial cost of study funding or not being awarded funding due to budget constraints. So if you were eligible, but then you could not be funded due to budget constraints, you may not appeal because there are no funds available to fund your studies. Requests to consider a funding decision based on budget constraints and or key performance indication targets do not constitute a valid appeal. And lastly, only master's, doctoral, and extension support students are allowed to lodge an appeal on scientific merit ground. And I think this would then be the second of last slide, the post-award information. So upon acceptance of award in a case where the student the application is successful, the students would be expected to pay for their own flights from their home country to their respective university in South Africa. But then the student will then be able to claim the reimbursement of their travel from their university upon arrival in South Africa. So they will claim the monies that they used to pay for their own flights coming to South Africa. And then they will claim with the university, largely because the NRF works with the universities, and the universities are the ones who actually do the actual administration of funds to the students. And then point number 3, when claiming for travel reimbursement, students will be expected to furnish the university or and the NRF with the invoice for the flights and the visa costs, so that it is clear how much was spent on flights and how much was spent on the visa. And then number 4, the total amount that has been allocated towards the travel from the student's home country to South Africa will be kept at 15,000, and this is inclusive of visa costs. And then upon completion of doctoral studies, the NRF will allocate the travel grant for the flights for students to return to their home country. This will be added as a travel grant, which can be claimed through the university. And then 3 quotations for the flights should be submitted by the student to the NRF, and then the cheapest quote from the 3 will then be funded. Students should also send proof of completion prior to claiming their for a purpose of returning to their home country. And lastly, of importance to note, I've already touched on this, we will be allocating a total or making total of 20 awards for the 2024 academic year. And then Minds will do the top up on a monthly basis to the partial cost of study funding by the NRF. And then the last slide will talk to what we call the global knowledge partnerships. This is the international training opportunities under the Global Knowledge Partnership Program. The intention really is to strengthen the NRF's capacity to identify and sustain partnerships that enhance international opportunities for exceptional doctoral students, postdoctoral fellows, and early career or emerging researchers. And the NRF would be working in close collaboration with higher education institutions and research institutions. And also, this would enable NRF grant holders to incorporate a period of 3 to 18 months of international research exposure into their research and education program. And then the students will either undertake a short-term research visit at an international institution to advance their research projects aligned to specific thematic areas. Currently, we have identified opportunities that might relate to the NRF Minds grant holders. The first one is the NRF Minds Mobility Program. This one is a component that goes with the scholarship. And then the second one is the Young Scientists Summer Program. It's open also to international students. But the Global Knowledge Partnerships programs are not only limited to these 2. For more information on these 2 and others, delegates and prospective applicants can refer to the Global Knowledge Partnerships implementation framework, and then it can be accessed under this link. You can always get hold of me or my colleague, Ms. Nontokozo Kunene, so that we can share this link so that you can indulge yourselves with the information that relates to the Global Knowledge Partnerships programs. Thank you very much. Ke a leboga. Enkosi, baya dankie.
Thank
Back
you
to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, and Thandeka as well. No, not Thandeka. Thank you, Nontokozo and Nelson, for the presentation on how to apply and the eligibility criteria. We'll now hand over to Ms. Thandeka, who will give us more of the logistics and background of how NRF and Minds will work with you after you have received the scholarship.
Morning, everyone. So my name is Thandeka Mthethwa. I am sitting with the Grants Management and Systems Administration Department at the NRF. So basically, my department is responsible for some of the pre-award processes, like screening of applications for completeness and eligibility. But we are mainly responsible for the post-award processes, such as the payment of the funds. But we mainly ensure that the grant holders comply with the NRF processes. And we are also responsible for ensuring that the grant holders are compliant in terms of the submission of the progress reports. Before I start with the presentation, which is mainly on the application process, I just thought it was important for me to take you through the call process. So this is basically the overview of the call process. So we open the calls. The call is currently open right now on the NRF Connect system. And then we receive applications online. So once you've completed the application, when you submit an application, it goes to the institution that you are applying with. So basically, it does not come straight to the NRF. It goes to the institution that you are applying with. So once the call is closed, then the institution will screen the applications for completeness as well as for eligibility. So during this process, if there is anything that is missing under the application, for an example, if you submitted a passport that is not certified, the DA at the institution might open the application for amendment. So when this is done, you will receive a notification that your application has been opened for amendment. And the comment as to why the application has been opened. So for an example, you'll receive an email that says the DA at your institution has opened this application for amendment. Please make sure that a certified copy of the passport is attached to the application, as an example. So once the applications are screened, then those that are eligible will go through the review process. Those that are not eligible will be rejected at the institutional stage. So if the application is rejected, you will get the notification that the application is rejected with the reason why the application is rejected. So once the applications are reviewed by the NRF, as Nelson has indicated, those that are eligible for funding will be submitted to the NRF. So once we receive the applications as the NRF, they will go through the screening process again. So we as GMSA will screen the applications for completeness and eligibility again, just to make sure that they were properly screened at the institutional stage. So some of the applications they go through the NRF review process, but the applications under the NRF postgraduate scholarships are not reviewed at the NRF. They are only reviewed at the institution. So in this case, they will go through the funding decisions. Once the funding decisions are concluded, then award will be made. And as Nelson has also indicated, once awards are made, we will publish the list of successful applicants on the NRF main website. And then we will also send award documents, and those will be available under the applicant's profile on the NRF Connect system. Okay, so this slide, okay, sorry. Okay, so I just thought it was important for me to have this slide just to re-emphasize the importance of reading the application documents before you complete an application. Sorry. So the application documents, we have a framework document that has the eligibility criteria. It will have the scorecard, the one that Nelson has showed you. So under the framework document, you will have that, the eligibility criteria, the scorecard, and some of the information that we feel is important. And then we also have an online application guide that is also available on the NRF website. These documents are available on the NRF main website, which is this. This is the link where you can find the documents. You won't find them on the NRF Connect system. You'll find them on the main NRF website. And also on the NRF main website, we have a manual on how to use the system, the NRF Connect system, since it's a new system. So as we've already indicated, the applications are submitted electronically on the NRF Connect system, and this is the link for the NRF Connect system. Unfortunately, we don't accept manual applications. So this is how the NRF Connect system looks like. So if you want to log in, you can just click on the ORCID sign here. So you might be asking yourself as to why does ORCID, why are we clicking on ORCID if you are logging in on the NRF Connect system? So basically, you log in on our system using the login details that you use on the ORCID system. So if you are not registered on the ORCID system, when you click here, you'll be redirected to the ORCID website where you have to register as a user, and then you can use the login details that you used on the ORCID system to log on to the NRF Connect system. I hope that is clear. So for any technical challenges that you may experience under the system, please send an email to our support desk. So this is the email address for our support desk. So this is the team that is responsible for ensuring that all your technical issues are resolved. When you log a call, you will get a notification that the call has been logged and someone will get back to you as soon as possible. And once it's resolved, you will also get a notification that it is resolved. So this is the screen that shows the registration on the ORCID website. So if you're already a user on the ORCID website, you can just go ahead and register and use that under the NRF Connect system. But if you are not registered on the ORCID website, you can come here and register. So you can use any form of credentials that you used on the ORCID website. So if you registered with the ORCID ID, you can use that. If you used an email address, if you use the Gmail account or Facebook account, you can use that to log on into the NRF Connect system. So maybe I should just emphasize that if you are logging in, you're not logging in onto the ORCID website, you are logging in onto the NRF Connect system using the ORCID credentials. So if you are currently registered on the NRF online submission system, so maybe I should explain what this is. So the NRF Connect system is the new system that we are using. Before we used this system, we used to use a system that was called the NRF online submission system. So some of you may know the system. If maybe you've tried to complete an application with the NRF, you may know of that system, but now we are using this system. So once you are registered on the OCAD website, you have to come and register on the NRF Connect system. And this is the registration page on the NRF Connect system. So what is very important, once you've logged in, you have to update your profile. Make sure that you've completed the personal details section. Make sure that you've completed the CV section under the system. So if you were a user on the NRF online submission system, you don't have to complete the CV section from scratch. So there is a functionality under the system for you to migrate the system from the old system to the new system. So this is the link that you will get once you log into the NRF Connect system. So you can just link on submission, and then you'll be expected to log into the NRF online submission. So you'll have to use the credentials that you used on the NRF Connect submission system. And then the information will be migrated from the old system to the new system. So this is the personal details section. It's one of the sections of the application, but it's also on the CV section. So what is important here is that you must attach a certified copy of your passport. So if we don't have the document, your application will be rejected. And it's also very important to make sure that you don't attach the document under the attachment section, but you attach it here. So as you can see, and as you can see here, you have an option of attaching the document. So please make sure that you attach it. So if you are a student that has a disability, you have to toggle to the right here to indicate that you do have a disability, and then you have to attach proof, which is in the form of medical certificate under the attachment section as proof that you do have a disability. And I think it's important for you to make sure that you attach proof, because as the NRF, we do prioritize students that are living with disabilities. Okay, I've already mentioned this. It's very important for you to update the CV once you've logged in. So if you are a new user, please make sure that you log in. So the CV section has the career history profile. It has a qualification/certification section, the research expertise, the student supervision section. So this is the homepage for the NRF Connect system. As you can see on your left-hand side, please don't mind some of the functionalities that are there. They are only there because I'm logged in as an NRF employee. So you may not have some of these on your profile because you are logging in as an applicant. So this is how the homepage looks like. So all the funding opportunities that you are eligible for will be under one of these blocks. So what is important to note as well is that if you are not eligible due to age, for an example, you won't be able to see the funding instrument, like doctoral, for an example, as we are specifically discussing doctoral application. So if you are over the age of 32 years of age, you won't be able to see this block. So another way an alternative way of completing an application would be going to My Applications, which is here. You can go to Applications, and then you'll be redirected to this page. Applications here. So we have categories of applications. As you can see, we have got concept notes, We have NRF postgraduate scholarships. We also have research grants. It's just that I cut my screen. I cut the screenshot. So we have NRF research grants. We have a lot of categories of funding. But for the purpose of this meeting, you have to click on the NRF postgraduate scholarships, and all the templates are available there. So the one that you should be applying for is the doctoral one. So, sorry. So just go next to, on your far right-hand side, you just click on create on the second one. So once you click on create, then you'll be redirected to this screen that shows the sections of the application. So these are the sections of the application. So what is important to note here is that those with the red asterisk here, as you can see, all of those, it means these are the compulsory sections of the application. So you won't be able to submit an application if they're not complete. And how do you see if your application is complete? So I just completed one section here just to show you. So once the section is complete, it will have a green tick. So those with the red cross, it means that the sections are not completed as yet. So if you want to submit an application and then the submit button is not active, please make sure that you go back and check if all the ones with the red asterisk are marked as complete. So once they are all marked as complete, then the submit button will be active. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all the sections of the application. I'm just going to go through a few that I think you might need help under, because some of them are just pretty straightforward. So I thought this one is very important for me to take you through, because it's actually in application category. Let me just show you the category. Here is it. Here it's application category doctoral. So I think it's very important because this is where you get to choose the funding opportunity that you are applying under. As you can see here, on scholarship applying for, we have a general scholarship, we have management side scholarships, we have NRF DART scholarship. So the one that you will select when you're applying for mines is the NRF Mines Scholarship. Please make sure that you select the correct funding opportunity, because if you select maybe for general scholarship, you won't be able to move the application to mines at a later stage. So please make sure that you select mines on the screen. So the section is called application category doctoral. So this is another screen, another section that I thought I should take you through because it's important. So it's called geographical area. So this section is mainly applicable to South African citizens. So as you can see here, you have to indicate the province of origin. So these are the South African provinces. So since you are coming from outside South Africa, you have to select other. And here under the district of origin, you have to select not applicable. Under municipal origin, not applicable. So you can just indicate home language, you can indicate other, since we only have South African languages under the section. So unfortunately, this section is compulsory, so you will have to complete it, but if you complete it this way, then it will be marked as complete. This is another section that is only applicable to South African citizens. It's called financial need. So I'm not going to go through. So basically, we want to under this section, we want to determine those students who are who have financial need. As you can see here, we have a section that says combined gross family income. So under this section, we want to determine whether the student is actually financially needy or not. But as I've said, it's only applicable to South African citizens. So under this section, what's important for you to do is just to toggle to the left. So if you toggle to the right, it means that because the section says, have you previously received or currently receiving NSFAS or ISFEP funding? So if you toggle to the right, it means you have. So in your case, please toggle to the left. So another section that is not applicable to you, so please just toggle to the left. It's called NSFAS/ISFEP funding. Just toggle to the left under this section as well. I believe this is the last section that is not applicable to you. It's a household contributor record. Under here, you have to toggle to the left. Okay, then moving on to the attachment section. So this section is applicable to you. So these I've listed here 2 of the important attachments that are required if you are completing an application. So we need official academic records on the university letterhead. So an academic transcript that is downloaded from the institution is not acceptable. So we need an official document from the institution on the university letterhead. So we don't want a certificate. We need an academic transcript. So if you attach a certificate to your application, will be rejected because that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the transcript. And what is also important is that it must be certified. Also what we need, but this one, as I've indicated, it's a requirement. You have to attach it under the personal details section, not here. I just put it here so that I can just re-emphasize the importance of the document. So we need the certified copy of the passport. Please note that it has to be certified. So if you attach a document that is not certified, your application will be rejected. So, so if you're a student that is living with the disability, you also have to attach the medical certificate, as I've already indicated. So this is another important section under the application. I'm not going to go through all the sections. But here you have to indicate whether you currently registered for the degree that you are applying for. So here we need information about the degree that you are applying for. So if you are currently doing your master's, we don't want information about your master's. We need information about the doctoral degree that you are actually applying for. That is very important. So as you can see here, we need to see the discipline that that you are applying under. And here, so you have to indicate whether what you're currently doing, whether you are employed or you are a full-time student. So if you are employed, then you have to indicate whether you're willing to resign to take up the scholarship, because as my colleagues have indicated, you should not be employed full-time and you cannot be full-time employed and hold a scholarship at the same time. Okay, and then I'm going to move on to the details of research section. So the reason why I emphasize the importance of going through the document is that some of the contents of the framework document is the scorecard. So before you respond to this section, please refer to the scorecard just to make sure that you know what is expected under the section. So this is the scorecard. Nelson has already touched on the scorecard, so I'm not going to go through it. Then moving on to the application support input section. So, so if you are applying for doctoral funding, you should have a doctoral supervisor with the South African University already. So what we need here is that you must capture the details of your supervisor. And once you submit an application, they'll receive a notification that you've submitted an application and they need to complete the referee report. So, and they need to respond to that report, or your application will not be considered. I also wanted to mention that it is your responsibility as the applicant to make sure that your supervisor has responded. So please go back under the application and check. You will be able to see whether they've responded or not. So the section, the application support input section, there will be a section that says responded. So if there is a no next to responded, it means they have not responded. If it's a yes, it means they have responded. So if they have not responded, it's your responsibility to go back and follow up and make sure that the report is submitted and on time. So the role that you have to select here is doctoral supervisor. So if we screen your application and then you did not indicate who the doctoral supervisor is, the application will be rejected. So what's important under the section is how you filter, or rather nominate the supervisor. So under the section, there is a, okay, just a second. So you have an option of searching for the email address or part of the name of the support input. So if for an example, your supervisor is Dr. Komane, then you can just type Komane, and then all the users on the system that have the Komane surname will be listed, and then you can just select the one that is your supervisor. And please make sure that the email address that they used to register on the system is the one that you're going to select when you search for them on the system. So if you search for them and you don't find them, so you have an option of capturing their details. As you can see here, you have to capture their title, their surname, initials, first name, email address, and institution. So please make sure that the email address that you capture here is the email address that they registered on the system with. So if they registered with the university email address, please make sure that that's the email address that you use on the system. Because if you use a Gmail account, they won't get the notification that you sent the referee report. So they won't respond as a result, and your application will be rejected. That is all from me. Thank you. So I'm just going to hand over to Mariam.
Thank you so much for that, Thandeka. Thank you to the NRF team. I believe we have all the information that we require for pre the application and post the application. If there are any questions, there are some questions in the Q&A session, and we see that they are being answered. Thank you so much, Nontokozo, for that. But if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. Our email addresses are on the flyers that have been sent out. You can contact either the Minds team or the NRF team, and you will reach either I or Nontokozo. But for the moment, we are going to hand over to Dr. Mbulelo, who's going to give us the closing before we head over to the rest of our days, as we see that the meeting has already taken 2 hours. Dr. Mbulelo, please take over.
Yes, good afternoon, colleagues, and apologies for that earlier mishap where we had just gone into load shedding. So when we go into load shedding, then there's a little bit of interruption in terms of connectivity, and that is what happened to me. And I'm sure Nelson also suffered the same thing. But I think Karin, the colleagues have said a mouthful. There's not really much that I can add, except to say thank you very much to the colleagues and also to Dr. Moyo. And we look forward to the questions, the engagement, and having everyone apply, and them visiting South Africa, being funded by the NRF and Minds as well. But other than that, I don't think there's any more contribution that I can make. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Mbulelo, definitely. And thank you to the attendees who were here. We look forward to having as much eligible candidates this year. As you have heard, we have space for plus minus 20 candidates. So please do send through your application forms as early as possible so that you are not caught up in the traffic that occurs towards the closing dates. And I see there are a few questions. How can we get a supervisor? So all this is based with your institution. As it has been mentioned that the Mines NRF, specifically NRF, works directly with the institutions pre your application and post your application. So please do work with your institutions, get supervisors and get your supervisors to please participate in your obtaining of the scholarship. Apart from that, if you have any other questions, please do contact us. Thank you, Dr. Boyo, for being here. Thank you to the NRF team and thank you to the Mines team for hosting this session. We believe that our applicants have more information as compared to how they did before the session, and with this we look forward to having as many eligible applicants as possible. This is all from our side. We wish you all a great day and thank you for being here.